All right, so I mentioned at the end of the last scale video, this guy, if you haven't seen it, this is pretty awesome, cool scale. Wanted to just talk about what, in my opinion, the best budget scale is. Basically, when I'm talking about budget, I mean sub $20 for a scale. I've had the opportunity to try a lot of scales. I've bought a lot of scales, and I believe that this is currently, as of 2022, this is the best. For me, there are a few different categories that you should consider when you're looking at a scale. If you're a complete noob, this is going to be very, very helpful. So, first of all, it's the actual physical size of the scale. Does this fit on your espresso machine? Will you actually have space for things? A lot of people, for example, don't know what they're doing, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna buy like a Time War Black Mirror and stick it on my tiny Gaja. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Stuff like that, not the most fun. So one is the size. You wanna look at the size of the scale. Two is responsiveness. Does it actually work when you put something on the scale? Is it sensitive enough? I know I've seen people use like kitchen scales, and they're not sensitive enough. They don't have the resolution. They don't go down to 0.1 grams, for example, and it's just not really suited for coffee brewing. And then three is actually the durability and build of some of these scales. Even though we're talking about such a cheap price point, it is worth considering what materials the scale is made out of. Is it durable? Can it withstand water? Can it actually, last? But I think the scales that we're going to talk about today, we're really kind of talking about one scale. It's gone under many different names and slight iterations of it. This one scale I'm talking about covers all of those. Here we go. This is, in my opinion, the best scale for under $20. And this will work for espresso, works for pour over, and that is the Weightman, the Neoweigh, or the Maxus. As you see here, we have a display. We have on, mode, tare, time. You can change the modes and whatnot. Here, the Neoweigh is the most recent iteration. So there are definitely a variety of videos on this scale. It is really convenient. I use it all the time for many different things. And if you wanted to know the difference between the Weightman and the Maxus, it is the time and power buttons are flipped. Same thing with the Neoweigh. So you'll notice the time and the power button are flipped on the Neoweigh and the Weightman. But the Weightman is technically discontinued right now, or you cannot purchase it on Amazon. You can purchase the Neoweigh through my amazing affiliate link in the description below. But this is an awesome scale. So the reason why this is such a great scale is, one, the capacity. So this goes all the way up to 1,000 grams. Two is that it's really rare to see scales in this price point to also feature a timer. And three, it's actually built really well. For example, even this Smart Chef scale, which we talked about earlier, the build of this is superior in every single way. It's built a lot sturdier, in my opinion, and I've been kind of putting my Weightman to a lot of use with a Cafelat Robot. So this scale here definitely feels a lot more, just built a bit better, and that's just because it has rubber coatings. These are all, it's got like a rubber base and all of that. So it's really, really convenient to use. The fact that you can, fit it with a tiny machine. Has a cover, take that off, but it just fits. So if you have a machine like a Cafelat Robot, you have a scale that fits here. If you have a Flair 58, scale fits here. And what's really nice too with all of these scales is actually these buttons. These buttons are not sensitive like some other scales. They are physical buttons that you can press. They feel great to press, and it runs off of actual batteries. So you can just kind of put AAA batteries in here and it'll basically run for forever. What's also really nice is the fact that there's even a battery indicator on this. It tells you what your battery life is on your scale, and that's so surprising to me at this price point. That $10 to $15 price point, it's kind of crazy to have a lot of these features. So I've been really using these scales for three different things. It's pretty straightforward. It's a scale, right? One is it's a scale that fits with all of my machines. Pretty much every single machine that I have will be able to fit the Weightman, especially my smaller machines like this, where even an Akaya Lunar cannot fit in. Weightman works. Maxus works, Neoweigh works. I've also been using it for dosing. It's just a solid scale for dosing, And I've also been using it for some pour-over purposes. For example, if I am traveling, I'm in a hotel, I need a scale that I can just bring with me around. It's kind of nice to be able to have a scale that is built nice enough that it can withstand traveling, going outside and all of that, but isn't as heavy as something like an Akaya. Also really helpful is the 1,000-gram capacity. That means you can actually use some drippers, you can stick things on here, and you can actually brew a pour over. You're not going to run out of capacity. There kind of is only, in my opinion, one downside of this scale, and that is that it is slightly slow. So, for example, if you are pulling your shots of espresso, you do want to stop maybe 1 second, maybe like 2 seconds before you actually finish your brew. So it is a little bit slow in that regard, but I don't really care. It's so cheap. It's so convenient. Basically, the biggest difference between the Neoweigh and Weightman, there's now a portafilter on the cover. I kind of just take the cover off anyway. And then two, you might have also seen there's a little cute little green heat-resistant pad that if you're brewing pour-overs, it's pretty convenient. And also, we now have some sort of engravings on the actual weighing pan. So we see a star with actual markings and specs and whatnot on here. The kind of biggest difference that I think sort of matters, but not really, is that they made the display a bit brighter on the Neoweigh. There's now an additional backlight, it seems. So if I hold it at this really awkward angle here, you should be able to see that the Neoweigh display is a bit brighter. For those of you who own Weightmans already and you wanted another Weightman, you're going to need to get used to the fact that the Neoweigh is flipped, exactly like the Maxus. Those on and off time buttons are flipped, so you just got to get used to that. But it functions basically the exact same. I guess one other thing to note is that when I do start the timer on the Weightman, the display turns off entirely, whereas on the Neoweigh, the display doesn't flash or doesn't like fully go blank and then start timing. So I guess that might be a little bit more convenient for those of you who are looking for the most precise brew. That's the Neoweigh Weightman Maxus scale. And it's an awesome scale. I love this scale so much. When you think about the costs of this scale, and it doesn't really matter what other scales you own, it is very worthwhile picking one of these up because it's just a very robust scale and it is so cheap. But yeah, that's all. I guess if you're still sticking around, you may be asking, why do I have this one? This is the greater good scale. I kind of don't like these scales. So you'll find these really cheap scales like this style or this style. I actually dislike this style because the display is on the right side or the left side, or it's like just so weird, especially when you're pulling espresso on something like a robot or a lot of these manual machines. You gotta really tilt your body and tilt your head to just look at the values you're at. Not very fun, in my opinion. Also, for some reason, this greater good scale is so much heavier than the Weightman, so this is arguably a worse scale for travel. That's all. Scale, super easy. If you have any questions, let me know. There are lots of other things we're going to talk about. Thank you so much for spending the time to watch the video. We have scales, cheap scales. Come on, guys, let's scale. All right, see y'all around.